The Black Ship Side Story, Barony of Screaming Forests. Day 5, Part 1. Wyatt woke in his room on the Unravel at 5:33 in the morning, brought out from his slumbers by a message arriving on his datapad. Wyatt, go ahead. We'll arrange setup of the 10 spare healing pods on the Eternal Garden plus supervising doctors. Send cases who will only survive with the help of the pods. It had been signed by Clara. Wyatt shook his head when Tornell had appeared on screen the previous night. He had looked shattered. It turned out that he still had many sick and injured men and women. Wyatt told him that he would see what he could do and had sent a message to Clara to see when she woke up, asking if there was anything she could do, other than let his medics try and help where they could. Apparently there was. No doubt he would find out more later. Dressing quickly in his armor, he then went to get breakfast. He couldn't help but notice the lack of cake on offer, or the rather bland steamed bread. As he was finishing up his breakfast, Galt came over to him. After exchanging greetings, Galt said, "Did you find Lady von Winterborn?" Wyatt looked up at the older man, saying, "I did. Thank you, Galt. Her Highness and Lady Cynthia had us join them for dinner last night." Galt's eyes went wide with shock, and quietly he said, "She did what?" Wyatt gestured for Galt to sit beside him for a moment, and Galt eagerly sat down as Wyatt quietly said, "I think Princess Clara was trying to put Lady Rachel in a more comfortable situation." He considered that idea for a moment before continuing, "It eventually worked. I now have an accountant to look after my accounts. Do you know until I met you, I never needed one?" Galt didn't know how to answer that, so stayed quiet as Wyatt continued. "When she is up and has breakfasted, I'm pretty sure Lady Cynthia will bring her to you. I was supposed to be doing that this morning, but I now have more important things to do. Lady Rachel will need access to communications. She is apparently going to find me suppliers with good prices." "Ah," said Galt. "I think I understand." "In the meantime, I have to go on a mercy flight," said Wyatt, looking at his datapad, where a notification indicated that the cargo had now been loaded onto his shuttle. "General Swallowtail told me last night he still has a lot of badly injured and dying. He did not want to trouble us because he thought we wouldn't do anything to help anyway." Galt snorted. "He doesn't understand you very well then, does he?" Wyatt got up. As he rose, he said, "No, I suppose not. Oh, well, perhaps in time we will find out more about each other. I expect I'll see you later." Galt raised his hand in a small wave goodbye. As Wyatt strode off towards the hangars, certain that Wyatt would surprise the general, Galt went back to his breakfast. When Wyatt arrived at the Eternal Garden, 6 medics and 15 nurses were waiting for him. He looked at them, seeing uncertainty in their faces, perhaps a little fear. Taking off his helmet, he told them, "Gather round," and they formed a small semicircle in front of him. Taking a deep breath, he began to speak. "Last night I spoke to General Swallowtail down on Hago. He tells me they are desperately short of any trained medical staff, and they have a lot of sick, burned, and injured people who fought against the Drazen. I told him I would try to help. I am here to ask for your help. No one will make you get on board the shuttle. You don't have to help. But I am sure, in the months and years to come, the locals will remember that you came when they needed help, that perhaps you saved lives which would otherwise have been lost. Also, Her Highness Princess Clara is going to set up 10 med pods here on the Eternal Garden. They might need help here to run." One of the men in the group raised his hand. When Wyatt looked at him, he said, "Excuse me, my lord, but all we have is what we are wearing. We have no instruments, supplies, or medicine to help." Wyatt looked at him. "You can address me as Sir or Wyatt, but please avoid the whole 'my lord' titles. I was born a commoner, and despite the title, I am not comfortable with it. There are several tons of supplies inside the shuttle. Why don't you have a look, see if there is anything that has been missed, and then let me know your decision." The 21 men and women went into the shuttle and spent less than 10 minutes checking to see just what supplies and equipment had been loaded on board before coming back out. Wyatt asked, "Do I have any volunteers?" And all 21 stepped forward. This time, however, one of the women raised her hand and waited until Wyatt acknowledged her. She said, "Sir, have you thought about asking the vets for help? I think there are about 20 of them. A vet is just as capable as a medic in treating wounds and broken bones and probably burns." Wyatt looked at the group of men and women in front of him. "You all agree that the vets could be useful?" he asked. After a brief conversation, they all agreed, so Wyatt said, "Okay, I'll ask them to be ready when I return with the first casualties." Quickly, he went to the nearest guards and asked them to assemble anyone with veterinary training or anyone else with first aid skills for when he returned, before having the medics and nurses the shuttle for the trip to Hago. When Wyatt arrived at the coordinates given to him, the general was there waiting, having heard the shuttle descending. In front of him, Wyatt could see a large barracks building, with several inflatable tent-type structures providing extra shelter. Tornell walked over to him as Wyatt got out of the shuttle. "You came," he said, holding out his hand in greeting. Wyatt grasped his hand firmly, saying, "I said I would. I've bought every spare medic and nurse, only 21 people in total, but it should help. Along with several tons of supplies, Her Highness Princess Clara is arranging for every spare medpod that we have to be set up on the Drazen vessel in orbit, along with some of our own medical staff, 10 pods in total for those most in need of their treatment." If Tornell was surprised that Clara would do such a thing, he did not show it, simply saying, "We are grateful for all the help we can get. Please thank the princess for me." Wyatt nodded. "Of course also, and don't take this the wrong way, but I have been told we have a number of vets on board. The medics advise me that they are likely to have extensive medical skills, but I thought I should talk to you first, before bringing them down. Besides, they were still asleep when I left." Tornell looked at him, saying, "I'll take the help of any man or woman willing to offer it who know what they are doing. If a vet can save a life, then I'm happy to have them here." "Okay then, the plan is for the medics to identify the 10 people most in need of medpod treatment. I will take those people up on the shuttle, then bring down the vets on the return trip. They have been told to save as many as they can. We are just looking at saving lives. Further treatment will have to wait until the emergency aid from House Ferentis gets here," said Wyatt. Wyatt and Tornell watched as soldiers came to help unload the shuttle, and the medics and nurses went to check out the sick and wounded. Finally, Tornell turned to Wyatt and said, "You never said why you called last night?" "Oh, I guess I didn't, right," said Wyatt before continuing. "Several reasons. The town has a number of, I suppose I could call them factories, which we are not entirely sure how to get going. There's a place to make biodiesel that seems to tie in somehow with the sewage treatment works, and there's a sugar beet processing plant. I was really wondering if maybe there might be people here who know how they work." Tornell wiped his hand over his face before answering, "I'm pretty sure I can find you people for the biodiesel and sewage plant. Those are fairly common. I'm not sure about the sugar beet plant, but I will ask for you." He gestured to the shuttle and supplies. "It seems that it's the least I can do." "Oh," exclaimed Wyatt. "I almost forgot. There's credits." "Credits? What are you talking about? No one has any credits on Hago, haven't for at least 20 years, said Tornell. "Well, you do now," said Wyatt. 67,489,532 credits, as of last night. Tornell looked at him as if he had gone mad. Finally, he simply said, "How?" Wyatt tried to recall the previous night's conversation, replying, "From what I've been told, a small Ferentis news company heard about the battle, and about Hago. Apparently this is major news. A lot of people saw the news item and have sent donations. My brand new accountant and Her Highness suggest that this might be a way to help Hago to recover, that allowing a news company onto Hago might encourage others to make charitable contributions." Tornell thought about this before asking Wyatt, "And what will your cut be, Baron?" Wyatt looked Tornell in the eye and said, "It's all for you, Tornell, or rather for Hago. I suggest you invest it in things for the people, whatever House Ferentis won't do, and maybe emergency supplies or things you cannot get here. I suggest that you invest in businesses and that they pay you back with 10% of their profits until the investment is repaid. That is what I intend to do with my own money. That way there's always money available in the future for new ideas." Tornell looked at Wyatt. As he did so, his demeanor changed, and he said, "I can't let you do that, Wyatt. If it were not for your actions and those of Princess Clara, we would have nothing, and there would be no news story. Take 10% for yourself. You have expenses as well." Wyatt shook his head. 10% is ridiculous. You have about 2 billion people on Hago that you are looking after. I have just under 1,600. Even offering me 1% is far too generous." Tornell looked again into Wyatt's eyes before he continued, All he saw looking back at him was honesty. Take 5%. The people of Hago would have nothing if it were not for your actions. Use it to do good for your barony, and you never know, the extra 3 million credits might prove useful. The aid from House Ferentis will ensure our survival as we readapt to the markets and the Principality's economy. Wyatt was watching the first of the stretchers being brought back to the shuttle as Tornell made his suggestion, remembering the previous night's dinner conversation. "Perhaps you are right, Tornell," he said. "With your agreement, I will ask Her Highness to make contact with the news company. I'm sure that she will be convincing. I suggest we leave the financial control to the accountant. I have a feeling that she can be trusted, and she needs to prove herself. Also, she claims to know how to deal with nobles, to get the best deals. I was made painfully aware last night of just how little I know about business. Once things settle down, I suggest you find a couple of people who are good with numbers. They can check her figures for you." From the corner of his eye, Wyatt could see 2 more stretchers going on board the shuttle. Tornell considered what Wyatt had just said. He didn't know the nature of the relationship between Wyatt and the Aster Princess. Clearly, it was more than bodyguard and princess. If Wyatt was getting advice, he said, "You never wanted this, did you?" Wyatt turned to look at the older man. "No, General, I just wanted to be a pilot. Get my time in, earn my pension, and then maybe get married if I was lucky now?" He shrugged. "Now I have no idea most mornings when I get up what I'm going to do for the rest of the day. Most of the nobles hate me for my commoner birth. The commoners hate me for being a noble. And I have no idea what I am doing except try to do the best I can for the people up there." Wyatt pointed up to the sky. Tornell turned to him and said, "I'm sorry, it's my fault you are here." Wyatt started to laugh. "No, General," he said. "It's at least partly my fault. I should have just kept my damn mouth shut. Besides, you have way more problems than I do." Tornell considered Wyatt's words before he too smiled. "You are not wrong," he said. "Was there anything else you needed other than technicians for the factory, etc.? "Oh, right." Wyatt paused for a moment and took out a printed sheet. "I'm also looking to purchase equipment. I thought that maybe you can supply some of this," said Wyatt as he passed over the sheet. Tornell took the sheet and laughed as he saw the blank rear side. "Don't let Elizabeth know you have blank paper. She will want every sheet." Then he started going down the list: professional kitchen equipment, chainsaws and safety equipment for forestry, paint, paintbrushes, sandpaper, nails and screws, all items made on Hago, construction equipment, cement silos, rock crushers, and a refrigeration plant. "I can supply a lot of this, I'm sure, but I'm curious. Even if I can get you a cement silo, you will still need to fill it up once you leave. No more shuttles, and that means a long cross-country journey for a big, heavy truck. I can see problems." Wyatt nodded. "Yes, General, I know, but I'm trying to sort the transport issues. If I manage it, I will let you know." Tornell looked at Wyatt before asking, "What about the paint? Mostly we've been producing it in camouflage colors." Wyatt stroked his chin in thought before replying, "What about white?" "It's just to protect timber. White will do for now. People can decide on other colors later." Out the corner of his eye, he saw one of the medics waving to him. "I think I'm needed," he said, gesturing towards the shuttle. Tornell turned and walked back towards the shuttle with him. "I'll find out about the paint for you and get a price on everything else." At the shuttle, the medic and a nurse had already strapped down 6 patients. The medic looked to Wyatt, saying, "Sir, these 6 are in a critical condition. I think we can save them if we get them to better facilities. The other medics will see who else is in need of urgent care while we move these ones." Wyatt turned to Tornell. "Well, General, I expect I will see you in a few hours," offering his hand. Tornell grasped his hand with his own, saying with a smile, "I shall be here, Baron." It did not take long for Wyatt to return to the Eternal Garden. As the medics and staff that Clara had sent started to offload the patients, he went to find the vets. As per his request, every vet and anyone with medical training of any sort was waiting. Wyatt entered the room and had everyone gather round. Then he started to speak. "Good morning. I've just come up from the planet Hago, the world that's going to be your new home, having dropped off almost every nurse and medic I could find. Some of you apparently know first aid, others are vets or have worked in animal care. Now I understand this, and those on the planet below understand it as well. But if any of you will volunteer to help, I would be grateful. Even if it's just to help calm people, bathe a person, or change a bandage, it will all help. We do have plenty of medical supplies and some equipment. I'll leave you to talk amongst yourselves." Wyatt stepped out of the room looking for one of the Nornavio staff that patrolled the Eternal Garden. It only took him a couple of minutes to find a junior lieutenant. The man saw him and snapped to attention. "Sir, how can I help the Lieutenant Commodore, sir?" Wyatt looked at him, seeing a nameplate. "Lieutenant Ostras, could you find and assemble any shuttle pilots and any medically trained personnel who are currently stuck here on the Eternal Garden, waiting for a ship to take them home, please, as quickly as possible?" Lieutenant Ostras gave a quick salute and a "yes, sir," then ran off to perform his task. When Wyatt returned to the other group, he found them split into two groups. "So what have you decided?" he asked. A large man stepped forwards, a good half a head taller than Wyatt, saying, "Sir, the majority of us will go to Hago to help. Those that are left will help here with those that will be joining us on the planet, and if any help is needed with the injured that are brought up." Wyatt in turn replied, "Thank you, everyone. Let's get you all sorted with equipment such as we have. If you need to say goodbye to anyone, please do so. You will be on the planet within the hour and likely out of contact for a couple of weeks. At least until the emergency supplies, personnel, and equipment arrive, and maybe a little bit longer." Wyatt next went to see the medical staff, a tiny group of doctors and surgeons, who due to lack of implants had been temporarily spared by the Drazan. He could see in their eyes that they were not sure of what to make of the man standing in front of them, wearing his black armor. But he could also see their air of smug superiority. There was no way to appeal to any sense of duty with these people, so he decided to use some of the lessons Princess Clara had given him, much as he hated having to do so. He coughed to get their attention. "Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. I am here to ask a favor from you, and in return I may grant you one. My name is Baron Staples. I serve the Princess Clara, the second princess of House Astor. We need doctors and surgeons to help treat wounded here on the Eternal Garden. This would just be for the next 2 to 3 weeks, until your transport arrives." The group turned and talked amongst themselves for a few minutes until a man, who appeared to be in his late 30s, turned to face Wyatt. "Excuse me, my lord, but, what would we get in return?" Wyatt smiled. He knew he had their attention. "You will be paid at the same rate as a person with your qualifications and experience would receive in the Royal Navy." He paused for effect. "In addition, if you perform well, I will ask Her Highness Princess Clara to write a short letter of thanks for your efforts." He looked across and saw at once that none of them would turn him down now, but just in case he added, "I am sure that such a letter will aid your career and status." He thought to himself that he really must remember to thank Nultar, Gregor, and Raquel. Their conversations with him had made him realize that there were ways and means to appeal to minor nobles. These doctors and surgeons had no implants. If they had, then the Drazan would have killed them. Therefore, they were likely fairly poor and probably from minor families. A short letter from Clara thanking them for their service would likely do wonders for their career and maybe even boost their status within their families. At worst, they could put it on their office wall saying, "Yes, I was there." Wyatt despised the arrogance and smug superiority most blue bloods displayed, but he also understood the horrors of the Drazan. He smiled as he thought, who knows? Perhaps this small thing might make these nobles better people. Probably not, but he was willing to take that small chance. The same man who had spoken before briefly talked with his fellow doctors and surgeons before turning to address Wyatt once again. "My Lord Baron, we would be honored to serve yourself and Her Highness Princess Clara." As Wyatt smiled, he thought to himself, "Yes, I bet you are." Then he realized, "I'm becoming a damned blue blood, manipulating others to do what I want," and the smile slipped slightly. However, he replied, "I thank you if you will follow this officer," pointing to Lieutenant Ostras. "He will take you to your newly arrived patients and to where you can find appropriate garments." After they had left, Wyatt went to speak to the pilots. They were in a different room, quietly waiting, chatting amongst themselves as he came in. Looking at them, he saw ages ranging from still in their teens to the oldest, who looked to be in his 40s. All were men. All looked as if they knew how to take care of themselves. Wyatt knew how to speak to these men. "Listen up," he began, getting their attention. "I am looking for 2 shuttle pilots, used to handling heavy craft. It's a 1-year contract with the option at the end, if you wish, to extend, provided you have done well. The job is to remote pilot a modified Drazen heavy lift shuttle, mainly for the transport of heavy equipment and materials around Hygo, the planet below us, but occasionally bringing the shuttle up here to the Eternal Garden or possibly the space dock. I'll pay you 1,000 credits per month plus free food and accommodation on Hygo in addition. I want you to train 2 new shuttle pilots each. If you succeed, I'll give you an extra 6,000 credits for each trained pilot at the end of the year, and a glowing reference for your next employer. If at the end of the year you decide to stay, then I'll provide you with a house. Wyatt stood back, watched and waited. It was a good deal he had offered. The free food and accommodation meant they would be much better off than the basic 1,000 credits per month would suggest. But these were guild pilots and miners. They had their own code, and most would likely want to return to their previous life. He was surprised, therefore, when after only 10 or so minutes had passed, 3 men stood in front of him, the youngest man in the room standing to one side and behind probably the oldest man, and, standing next to the older man, another man in his mid-20s. There was a clear family resemblance between the oldest and youngest men, so Wyatt started by talking to the other man. "Tell me about yourself," he asked. The man came forward and stood straight, almost but not quite at attention. "My name is Thierry Jacquemoud, 28 years old, guild pilot, 5 years of service in the Royal Navy, another 4.5 in the guild, 1,242 hours pilot in command of various Navy small craft, mainly fighters and shuttles, another 3,902 hours piloting heavy lift shuttles, mainly at a guild shipyard. That's where the damn Drazen took me, since there's no shipyard to go back to, a year here wherever we are. Well, that sounds pretty good to me right now." Wyatt liked what he saw in front of him. The man was also respectful, but did not grovel or try to act as if he was better than everyone else. "Okay, Thierry," he said. "Consider yourself hired." Then he looked at the other 2 men, addressing the older one. He asked, "And what about you?" The older man looked Wyatt straight in the eye. "My name is Jakob Molitor. I'm 43 years old. This," gesturing to the younger man, "is Johann, my son. He's 17. We come as a pair. I've got 5 years naval service, almost all of it flying shuttles for the 5th Fleet, 1,311 hours pilot in command, then 20 years working for various mines, another 29,622 hours flying everything from asteroid tugs to mobile processing plants. Johann here is a pilot in training. So far, he's got 71 hours as pilot in command of a cargo shuttle. I'm not asking any extra for him, but we are all the family we have. I won't split us up. I'm thinking that maybe, if things work out, we might take you up on that long-term offer." Wyatt looked at Johann. He could see the pain in the young man's eyes, along with anger. Well, he thought. He knew how that felt. He said, "So, Johann, tell me, do you want to be a pilot?" Johann's head snapped up on being addressed. "My lord, I am a pilot. My dad says I might in time be a pretty good one. I might never get to kill Drazen, but I can do my bit." Wyatt looked at Johann's father. "Okay, Jakob, you have a deal. I won't give you any extra for training Johann, but if he's at least as good as any of the other 4 trainees, I'll give him the 6,000 credits. That way, stay or leave, you both have some money. The free food and accommodation applies to Johann as well. Now go get your stuff and say any goodbyes. I'll take you down to the planet with me shortly." Turning to the other pilots in the room, Wyatt said, "Thank you for your time, gentlemen. I hope that good fortune is with you for the rest of your days, Thierry, Johann, and Jakob. Meet me in the shuttle bay when you have your stuff." 15 minutes later, the pilots, the vets, and the medics who had ridden up with the patients earlier were all on board the shuttle, along with further medical supplies and some additional food for those in Newtown. Returning to the aid station, Wyatt was surprised to see General Swallowtail again, apparently waiting for him. "Ah, Baron, I see you have brought me more medics, thank you," he said. Continuing, he added, "I have sent out the call for people who might know how to make the various bits of equipment you asked about work. No reply yet, but hopefully in a day, 2 at most, I should have some people who can help." Wyatt was slightly shocked that the general had found the time to do this already, and so his reply was not prepared. That's very kind of you, General, though I'll need to sort out a way to pay them," was all he could manage. Tornell, however, continued to surprise him. "Don't worry about payment. I'll sort out whoever we find for you. It's the least I can do in return for the medical aid. Now, with regard to the other items on your list, I think we can do everything you need. But some things are not brand new. No problem with the timber felling equipment, of course. After all, this is Hago. I am told we also have enough brand new industrial kitchen equipment in stock to equip 4 of 5 kitchens. Now, as for the rest, you would either need to wait until we have the people and the factories running again, or... How would you feel about almost new equipment? Wyatt repeated. Almost new? Tell me more, General. Tornell continued. As I previously mentioned, we built a lot of barracks, training camps, call them whatever you want. We don't need all of these any longer, and several were essentially new, maybe used for a few months at most. All you need to do is bring some people in with a few basic tools and take the kitchen equipment away. Between these and the remaining new items, I'm pretty confident we can fill your kitchen wish list. Wyatt considered that for less than a minute before saying, General, I think that's an excellent idea. My father is constantly repairing older items, and I know that even when they are old, many things can be made almost like new. If these kitchens have only had a few months' use, I'm sure they will likely be perfectly good, so long as the price is right, of course. Tornell nodded. Of course. I think we can probably fulfill most of the things on your list. The construction equipment, we have lots of... I can find you some almost new items for a good price, all in military green finish. As for the cement bins and rock crusher, I can give you several locations where you can find such items. We mainly transported them to barrack sites, constructed them, and then left them there. It was just about impossible to move them with the vehicles we had available. Once they had been built, I'm not sure how easy they would be to turn into manageable-sized pieces for transport, but if you can move them, you can have them. Otherwise, they are just likely to be left to rust in place. Wyatt looked at Tornell. You are being very generous, General. Can I ask why? Tornell grinned. Something you said earlier, Baron, concerning credits, nobility, and accountants. I am slowly becoming painfully aware that nobles, present company excepted, of course, are likely to charge me a premium for anything I need for the population. I was wondering if you might allow me to use your accountant to place the orders for me. After all, if they are going to be looking after the money, it seems to me that they should have no problem spending it. Wyatt couldn't help himself. He started to laugh. Once Wyatt had finished laughing, he said, Sure, General, that won't be a problem. By then, the remaining supplies and vets had been offloaded, just leaving Wyatt with food and the pilots before boarding the shuttle again. Wyatt said, I'll be back in a few hours to take anyone else up to the Eternal Garden. I convinced a couple more doctors up there that they could do themselves a favor by helping care for your men and women. Tornell looked at Wyatt. Convinced? He asked. Wyatt smiled. I told them I'd pay them for their work until their transport ships show up, and if they do a good job, that I will ask Her Highness to give each of them a short letter of commendation. They were all minor, or lesser nobles. Such a letter may get them a better position, or so I'm told. Why is Her Highness willing to do this? What's in it for her? Asked a very confused Tornell. Wyatt rubbed his chin with one hand while he considered Tornell's question. Finally, he said, Princess Clara believes in giving people second chances. She also believes in treating people fairly. So, for example, she will help out where she can. If writing a few short thank you notes is enough to persuade some minor nobles to do a good job, then she will do so, but do not mistake that kindness for weakness, General. If you do well, she will keep her promise. What's more, she will ensure House Forentis keep to the deal, but she only gives 1 second chance. Please don't let her down. Tornell thought about this for only a moment before replying. Thank you for your honesty, Lieutenant Commodore. I expect I'll see you later. After briefly checking the shuttle was good to go, Wyatt hopped into the cockpit and took off, heading for Newtown. As he flew away, he suddenly realized that the general had referred to him by his rank rather than his title. Perhaps things were looking up. 38 minutes later, they arrived at Newtown. As they landed, Wyatt noticed that 5 auxilia were now standing sentry duty, close to the landing area. At least now, if the Drazen tried to attack Newtown, there would be some warning. As he got out of the shuttle and opened up the rear, he noticed that the auxilia had kept their watch. Rather than coming to see if they could help, the sergeant major was clearly working on their training. With his pilots following, Wyatt left the cargo bay open and walked over to the sentries. Two came to attention as he approached, but the other three who were looking out towards the horizon stayed in their positions. "At ease," he ordered as he approached. "Would you happen to know where I can find Aino by any chance?" he asked. One of the sentries saluted and said, "Sir Administrator Aino, is I believe in his office in the town hall?" Wyatt said, "Thank you, carry on," and then walked off towards the town square with the three pilots following behind. When they got to the square, a few people were sitting outside the inn. A table had been laid out with bread, cheese, some fruit, and various bowls full of different foods. Wyatt told the pilots to take a seat and have something to eat, while he went to find Aino. Sure enough, he found the young man in the office that he had made his own from the first day. On the wall was a map of Newtown, with various colored pins and stickers applied to it, and string leading to notes pinned to the board. As he came in, Aino was putting small yellow stickers on several building outlines. "What are you doing, Aino?" asked Wyatt. "Oh, hello, Wyatt, you're back. I'm making a detailed plan of the town. I found some packs of colored stickers and also colored pins. So, for example, yellow houses are slightly larger homes that I thought would be good for families with children. Red pins mean the building is dangerous and needs either to be demolished or requires extensive repairs. Green pins means only minor repairs required. Purple stickers show what appear to be workable businesses, places that have equipment and maybe supplies." Wyatt was impressed. This actually seemed like it could be useful, so he asked, "How do you know what needs to be done? And how did you decide which houses are good for families?" Aino looked up. "Well, the families were fairly easy. There's a bunch of slightly larger homes around the park in the middle of the town. The park already has a children's play area, though that needs some work." He gestured to a red pin on the map. "We have more than enough of these type of houses around the park, and I thought, why not? The school is close, and there are shops and restaurants nearby. It seems sensible. As for what needs to be done, I have now got notes for every building, mostly its exterior decoration, for instance, this house here," he said, pointing to a yellow stickered building with a green pin, then looking at a note linked to it by a string. "This says cracked window pane, front left ground floor, dripping tap in kitchen, exterior woodwork needs paint refreshed. Whilst this," he said, pointing to a building with a red pin in, "says roof tiles missing, rot in upper floor west end, west wall in dangerous condition. I remembered what you said about getting the restaurants up and running before we can bring people down, so I sent a bunch of the builders and carpenters to see if any of them need repairs. The dark blue stickers are restaurants. The light blue are takeaways." Wyatt looked at the map again. Only 2 restaurants had red pins in, the others all showed green. "So what's wrong with those 2? He asked, gesturing at the map. Aino looked over and studied his notes. "This one has a broken toilet bowl in one of the customer facilities. The ladies, apparently, it says not a problem. They can salvage a good toilet from one of the buildings that needs to be demolished." Aino looked at the other set of notes. "This takeaway has a kicked-in back door, not by us. It needs a new door and part of the wooden floor replaced. Possible further work once they have seen what's under the damaged floor." "So the rest are in pretty good condition then?" asked Wyatt. Aino nodded. "Looks like it," he said. "The guys doing the survey said the restaurants were solidly built. They also seem to have been fairly well looked after. They are, in the words of one of the builders, in need of a good clean and a lick of paint, especially the kitchens. But other than that, they are mostly okay. By the way, how come you only just got here?" Wyatt smiled. "If you must know, I've been ferrying medics and medical supplies to General Swallowtail. He hadn't asked, because he didn't think the nobles would care." Wyatt shook his head at that. "Anyway, the upside is that the general is willing to make us a deal on a bunch of new or nearly new professional kitchen equipment. I can go pick it up tomorrow along with some forestry equipment. He's also going to see if he can find anyone who knows about the production of biodiesel, the sugar beet plant, and the sewage treatment setup. Given our aid, we won't be charged for these advisors. I just hope that whoever he finds knows what they are talking about. Also, I've just bought 3 shuttle pilots. Well, 2 pilots and a potential pilot who's the son of one of them. I need a decent-sized house, in reasonable condition, 3 bedrooms for the pilots, and a further 4 for potential trainees, plus a large room I can put some remote operation equipment in. I was thinking maybe one of the stone houses with the courtyards, if we have any not really in use." Aino looked at the map and pointed to 3 buildings. Any of these three might work. All are large, mostly empty buildings, in fair to good condition. Wyatt took out his own copy of the map and noted down the three structures. Okay, I'll grab some lunch and take them to see if they prefer one over the other two. He looked at the map and realized one was almost down on the beach, probably a poor choice given that he wanted to make a permanent landing pad near the station. The other two were close to each other near the northern edge of town. Anything else I should know about? He asked. Aino looked down at his notes. Well, we have 2 working electric vehicles, including the milk tanker. There are a bunch of small factories, some with equipment in, a flour mill, a couple more warehouses with food supplies in, some offices. Oh, and we've got a lot of fresh fish. The fishermen took one of the boats out this morning before dawn for a short test run. 2.5 hours later, they came back at almost full capacity. We can't keep the fish here without refrigeration. I told the cooks to do a fish course for dinner tonight. I wondered if you wanted to take the rest up to the ships in orbit. Oh, and Elizabeth showed the fishermen which fish to throw back. Wyatt thought about that for a moment. I'll call up and see. If not, maybe General Swallowtail and his people would like some. Where is Elizabeth, by the way? Aino shrugged. She was doing something in the garden of the house you gave her earlier. I've no idea if she's still there. Wyatt said, Perhaps you could get any spare fish into some boxes or crates for transport and get them taken up to the shuttle. There are more supplies on the shuttle to go to the kitchens as well. I will be going back to the Navio later. Also, we have an accountant like you who is no longer wanted by her family, so I'm giving her a home here in return for her accounting skills. There might be someone else. I've not met him yet. I'll do that later. His name is Marcus, and he claims to be an organizer. If he works out, that would give me 5 people to run Newtown when I'm not here. Yourself, Rachel, and Marcus are all nobles of one type or another. I'm going to add in the sergeant major for security, and Elizabeth. If her father survives, then he will end up a noble, therefore, so will she. In the meantime, she knows what the people want and need, and she knows as well as anyone about the local plants and animals. Aino looked at him, slowly nodding his head in agreement. That actually makes sense. We would then serve as what? Your council? I was wondering what would happen when you left. Wyatt thought a moment. Yes, a council is probably a good word to use. House Ferentis will ensure that a terminal is installed here in Newtown, perhaps in the town hall, perhaps in an office or a private house. We can work that out. I'd like the council to report to me once a month. Probably best if I call you. We can work something out, and then you only need to communicate if there's something you cannot solve between you. I'd like everyone's thoughts on what needs to be done in Newtown, but before we do so, I'd like to get people into their homes. Wyatt turned to leave and then turned back. You said more workshops. Are there any carpentry shops? Aino consulted his lists. 3. Would you like me to mark them on your map? Wyatt simply passed over his map for Aino to mark with a "See the 3 workshops." Thanks, I'll see you before I leave, was all he said before going out the door. Going from the town hall to Elizabeth's shop was as easy as walking down the steps and turning right, entering the shop. Wyatt realized there was something different about it. The floor no longer had any dust on it, and the windows had been washed. To the rear, the door to the garden was open, so he went over to it and looked out. Elizabeth was hard at work in the garden. She must have found some gardening tools somewhere, because she had piled up several mounds of garden debris. Wearing a t-shirt and shorts with a hat on her head to keep the sun off, she was busy making a pile of dead dry leaves and plant material in the middle of the garden. Wyatt coughed to get her attention, and Elizabeth looked over. Sorry to interrupt you, but I'll be seeing your father again later today. I just wondered if you had any messages to pass on. Elizabeth started to shake her head no, but then called out, Wait a moment. Do you mean actually see him? Wyatt replied, Yes. I'm going to probably take some of his injured men up into orbit for more advanced treatment. I took some up this morning, and there are still some med pods available. Your father said he'd see me when I returned. Elizabeth walked over, asking, If I found some fresh fish from the morning's catch, could you take them to him? He never eats properly because he's always so busy. Wyatt smiled at that. Yes, of course. But Aino will be going to pack stuff into boxes for transport to the Navio before it goes off, so make sure you go find what you want first. I see you've been busy inside and out. Elizabeth nodded. Yes, inside was easy, but clearing the garden is hard work. I've also spoken to the doc about access to next door's garden and to one of the builders, who told me that it will be easy to put a couple of arches through the garden wall to join the two gardens, so I thought I'd get everything that's dead and dry, pile it up in the middle of the garden here, and tonight after dinner have a bonfire, then I can sort of start from scratch. I also spoke to a couple of the handymen who are keen gardeners. I want to create something here that's a bit like what we saw on the estate with the chicken cages. I can put a mesh over the top of both gardens, then put in native flowers, vegetables, and fruits, anything that will grow locally, and that's safe, maybe with a small section to show dangerous plants as well. That way, people can visit and see what's good and what's dangerous. Wyatt was once again impressed by the young woman in front of him. She had come up with the idea on her own and already found people who could help turn it into a reality. He thought for a moment before saying, "I think that's an excellent idea. Now the priority is to bring people down to their new homes here, so I've said the most important thing is to get the power restored properly, then get the restaurants all up and running so we can feed everyone, and the farms for the same reason. After that, it's make sure we have enough livable homes for everyone. However, this is important, knowing what's safe and dangerous. I can see that I'm told only a couple of the restaurants need actual building work rather than maintenance, so if the builder thinks it will be easy and quick to put in the two arches, get it done as quickly as you can. Also, before it gets too busy, I suggest you find more gardening tools and see about persuading people to come and help. Just do a little bit before or after dinner. If each person just dug 1 square meter, you'd soon have the garden dug. I'm also learning how this works, but I'd suggest recording the name of every person who helps. And then we can put their names around the garden. It's important that people are recognized." Elizabeth looked at him in surprise before finally she said, "That is not something I would ever have expected to hear from a noble Wyatt, let alone a baron." Wyatt, still smiling, said, "Well, I'm still a commoner. Even if the prince did make me a noble, that might change. They may decide it was all a terrible mistake. But until they do, we reward or acknowledge people for the effort they make. Especially when it serves the people, not just themselves. I would like to think that in, say, 50 years' time, there will be people who can bring their grandchildren here and point to their names saying, 'See, I helped get this beautiful garden started.' Also, just maybe it will help when you come to take on the park, which will need far more effort, if you can put a little plaque next to things saying not just stuff like the plant name, where it's from, and other scientific details, but maybe who planted it and when, or if someone creates a new bench or restores a wall, put their names on, just a little thing that says someone helped." Elizabeth was still looking at him oddly, but less so. Finally, she said, "That's actually a really nice idea, but I'm going to need a new notebook." Wyatt said, "I'll return later for the fish and any messages for your father. I'll tell Aino to come and find you before he goes to get the fish." He quickly went back to see Aino, saying, "When you go to sort out the fish, take Elizabeth with you. Also, I was thinking, split it into 2 even packs. I'll drop 1 lot off with the General's Field Hospital and take the other to the Nornavio." By the time Aino had said, "Okay," Wyatt had already left again, going to find some lunch.